The United States became a democracy in the 1700s, one of the world's oldest democracies. India joined the club almost 200 years later. But India made long strides. Today it is the world's largest democracy and a thriving, robust force. New Delhi and Washington are more than 12,000 kilometers apart, but they have more in common than you would imagine. Today we'll explore that. From the National Mall in Washington, D.C. and the Central Vista in New Delhi, how two vibrant seats of democracy are linked by a single thread, the ability to evolve and represent their nation. Our next report brings you the tale of the two capitals. Behind me is the US Capitol building. It is part of what is called the front yard of America, the National Mall, home to the most iconic buildings in the country, also the seat of the US Congress. The entire expanse is a reflection of a confident country. But how was it born? I have a story to tell you. A tale of two capitals, Washington, D.C. and New Delhi. One symbolizes the world's oldest democracy, the other is home to the world's largest democracy. Both capitals are separated by distance but united by shared values and some history. Our story begins in Washington, D.C. The year was 1775, the US Revolution had just ended, and the Americans wanted to create a new identity for themselves, something that breaks away from their past of the British colonial rule. George Washington was the president, and he had a plan. He picked the land himself. He passed something called the Resident Act that helped create the US Capitol and the President's House, which is the seat of the US government. And for this, he handpicked a civil engineer. It was this man, Pierre Charles L'Enfant. He designed the first plans for the city of Washington, D.C., inspired by the Champs-Élysées in Paris. He visualized Washington from scratch, a grand city with wide avenues, public squares, and buildings that inspire, within a district of hills, forests, and greenery. What L'Enfant did not know then was this. His vision would inspire another democracy over 200 years later. India, yet another democracy emerging from the shadow of its colonial past. A few years back, India launched a major project, the Central Vista project, an attempt to decolonize India's capital. When Edward Lutyens and Herbert Baker built New Delhi, they too were inspired by L'Enfant's designs. But the old Central Vista was made to serve the British. The India of the 21st century needed an upgrade. The new Central Vista aims to represent a new India with a brand new parliament building and a central secretariat to house all ministries. Also a revamped boulevard, now called the Kartavya Path, or the Path of Duty. This is India's new Central Vista, and its similarities with the National Mall in Washington are striking. Both are iconic spaces, featuring grand and expansive buildings, imbued with deep symbolism. Each monument on the National Mall represents a part of America's history. In New Delhi, the India Gate and the National War Memorial evoke a sense of national pride. And the new parliament represents the rich tradition of democracy in India. This was a radical change for India, much debated, as most decisions are in a robust democracy. But such changes are part of the story for Washington's National Mall. It has undergone many such transformations. It has been rebuilt, burned, extended, and restored many times. The architectural revamp did not alter the core of America's democratic foundations. India's Central Vista project is no different. It's an attempt to revamp the democratic spaces of a confident country, a country that sees itself as a lot more than a former British colony. And it is proof that democracies need to evolve. Whether it be the National Mall behind me or the Central Vista in New Delhi, they show that democracies need to be in tune with the times to truly reflect the countries they represent.